I had a funny experience this week. I'm in Atlanta for the summer, and I just joined this nice gym in Buckhead. And as part of the membership, you get a complimentary personal training session. So I'm sitting there with this personal trainer, a young guy, maybe 29, maybe 30 years old, and he asked me what my workout routine is like. And so I tell him I do chest and triceps one day, then back and biceps, and then legs, and then I mix in some cardio. And then he asked, well, how long have you been doing it like that? And I think, well, geez, freshman year of football in high school is probably when I learned to lift like that. So what was that, like 35 years ago, maybe something like that? And he smiles and he says, well, that's how lots of people train. But athletes usually train different. They usually train posterior, anterior, and lateral movements. And when he said athletes, I just felt a certain kind of way. Because doesn't this guy know who he's talking to? I've completed Ironman triathlons. I've run marathons. I was a certified Army combatives instructor. I've led group fitness classes, P90X. I've played college athletics at a D1 school. I spent decades around fitness. Of course, I'm an athlete, except I hadn't been exercising in probably about 8 months. I haven't competed in any sports or races or anything like that in probably 8 years. And I'm currently not on any team, not even a flag football or frisbee team. And so that got me thinking, can I really call myself an athlete if I'm not actually doing anything athletic? Maybe I was an athlete. Maybe I can become an athlete again one day. But today, if I'm honest, I don't know if I'm an athlete. And it got me thinking about something much deeper because I hear people say all the time, and maybe you fall into this category, I'm spiritual but not religious. I'm spiritual but not religious. And honestly, I think most people consider themselves spiritual. I've never met anyone that has not considered themselves spiritual. But here's the question I want to ask. What makes someone spiritual? Is spirituality simply something you believe, or is it something that you practice? Because I don't believe spirituality is an identity. I believe that spirituality is a discipline, it's a habit, it's a practice. And nobody becomes an athlete by believing in fitness. You become an athlete by training, by going to the gym, by being part of a team. And in the exact same way, nobody becomes spiritual simply because they call themselves spiritual. I believe that you become spiritual by practicing spirituality. Now, don't misunderstand me. I believe that every single human is inherently a sacred, spiritual, divine soul. Everyone carries that divine spiritual spark. But there's a difference from just being a spiritual entity and actually training that part of yourself. It's just like every person has muscles, but not everyone exercises them. Every person has a spirit, but not every person nurtures it. Study after study reaches the same conclusion. People who pray, people who meditate, people who belong to spiritual communities, people who cultivate practices of gratitude and purpose and forgiveness and compassion and love, they consistently, time and time again, live longer, they're healthier, they're happier, they experience less anxiety, and they recover better from hardships. And what's fascinating is that these studies don't point towards any particular religion. They point towards practice. The benefits don't come from simply checking a religious box and saying, yes, I'm Christian, or yes, I'm Hindu. They come from engaging in habits that shape your soul. And I think that's where many people get stuck. Because Many of us have been hurt by religion. Many of us carry religious trauma, me included. Maybe you grew up being told that there's only one path to God and you need to follow this form of Christianity. Maybe it was out of fear. Maybe it was out of love. Maybe you just want to be accepted by your parents. I don't know. Or maybe you've seen lots of people that claim to follow Jesus but act nothing like him. I understand that. I've wrestled with many of those same questions. But rejecting unhealthy religion doesn't mean rejecting spiritual practice. And if anything, it becomes even more important that you're intentional about discovering the practices that genuinely help you grow. I often tell people, you need to discover the religion of you. There is no right universal religion. There is no one that can tell you the way to God. You have to figure out your own unique spiritual journey, what ignites your soul. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's sitting quietly for 20 minutes and repeating a mantra with your mala beads, or setting a timer on your iPhone for 20 minutes. That's what I frequently do. Not as often as I should. I do have 3 kids after all that take a lot of my time. Maybe it's journaling once a week. Maybe it's writing sermons like these, being a minister. This is part of my spiritual journey. Maybe it's working in your garden and connecting with the creative source that is God. Maybe it's reading the Bible. Maybe it's reading books from other traditions. Sometimes my spiritual practice is just sitting in the morning, having a cup of coffee, and just being one with nature. Sometimes it's creating art, because God is a creator. And I believe that every act of genuine creation allows me to participate in that creative spirit. And honestly, my children have become one of my greatest spiritual practices, because there is nothing I've ever encountered more in my life that challenges me to be more patient when I'm exhausted, to be more loving when I feel like I have nothing left to give, and to participate again in that creative source energy. And your spiritual practices may look completely different than mine. Maybe it's prayer. Maybe it's yoga. Maybe it's walking in nature. Maybe it's doing magic mushrooms or other psychedelics. Maybe it's serving your neighbors and loving them the way God intends. Maybe it's painting. Maybe it's music. Maybe it's sitting in silence. Maybe it's watching these sermons on Sundays. I don't know. The point is that your practices aren't going to look like mine. They're going to be different. But the question is, what are you doing consistently to get your soul in shape? Are you an athlete? If so, you need to do athletic activities. If you're spiritual, you need to do spiritual activities. I mean, what happens if you stop exercising for a year? Everyone knows. Your body becomes weak, you lose muscle mass, you get fat. But we rarely ask what happens if we stop training our souls. I think we become more anxious, more judgmental, more distracted, less loving, less kind. And the world doesn't need, we have enough of that crap in the world. So here's my challenge, my question for you is, are you spiritual? And if so, what do you do to train your soul? Because spirituality isn't something you can just claim, it's something that you practice. It's not an identity, it's a lifestyle. And it's not about believing in the right things or thinking that you know the only way. It's just about becoming a person that loves more deeply, that's more forgiving, that shows up more fully for the people around you every single day. You're training for something. The question is, what are you training for? God bless you. I love you. Have a wonderful week.